virtual applause. Brian Fitzy, our famous musician, thank you so much for playing us in. I really appreciate you. Welcome, everyone. So as you may have heard this morning, we had a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning. So as always, we ask for your patience. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to our live virtual event with the Society of Professional Women and in partnership with the Forum of Executive Women in Philadelphia. I'm Nicole Stevenson. I am the director of the Society of Professional Women here at the Mainline Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to welcome and thank our moderator, PwC Office Managing Partner and Forum member Deanna Byrne, and each of our panelists today, Drexel University's Gupta Governance Institute Interim Director, Alyssa Abbott, the Forum of Executive Women Board Member, Chair of the Women in Leadership Committee, Melissa Ludwig, and Children's Scholarship Fund, Philadelphia Executive Director and Forum Member, Keisha Jordan, for an engaging, informative, and impactful conversation today, and all the work that we've done leading into this. When the SPW Advisory Council shared the increasing importance of diversity on boards as an important step towards greater gender equity in all aspects of business, we found all of you to be the best local experts to provide lessons on the pathway and journey to the boardroom. So thank you. We are so proud to be able to partner with the Forum of Executive Women on our first event together. So we welcome them and their membership that are joining us today. SPW would also not be possible without the continued support of our members and most of all, our sponsors. Please allow me to share our screen today to thank them. I'm going to pull that up. Like I said, I asked for a little bit of patience with our technology to make sure we have everything running. It would not be possible without these sponsors. So I just want to make sure that we give them the proper acknowledgement for helping us to advance our mission and thank them so much for all they do for the SPW program. These companies demonstrate a commitment to greater gender equity and diversity. You can continue to help us serve you by communicating with the Mainline Chamber of Commerce staff, taking our event surveys, and by interacting with us and others on social media. You can use our hashtags MLCC and hashtag SPW Mainline. You can also register for our communications at mlcc.org. Thank you again for your support. SPW has been hosting successful virtual programs, and you can watch all of these recordings now or at any time, spwmainline.com. Our next SPW trademark event will be on Wednesday, September 22nd, with Dr. Brandy Baldwin, author of the book, Authentic Ally, A Guilt-Free Guide to Becoming an Ally for Racial Equity, and founder of the Calling All Allies Project. Dr. Brandy will share insights on how professionals can elevate their impact by adopting an allyship mindset and a cultural competency approach to their leadership style. Attendees will walk away with a deeper understanding around cultural and generational difference and how to show up as inclusivity champions in the workplace. Before introducing today's guests, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items for you. Please remember to submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. The panel will answer questions for about 10 minutes after the event today. You can use the chat to share your contact information with attendees. You can save that chat by clicking the three little dots at the bottom right corner of your chat box, and you can do that at any time. In order to continue with our efforts to connect individuals with one another through networking during today's program, we will be sending the attendee list to all attendees and sponsors, and will provide formal introductions by request. We will be hosting a breakout session after the Q&A today. Each attendee will have the opportunity to introduce themselves and their company. The link for the meeting rooms will be provided in the chat function now, through your registered email, and in the chat function again at the end of the formal program today. SPW's vision aligns with the forum in seeking to create greater gender balance in leadership by increasing the number of women in power throughout business, nonprofit, and government sectors. This includes their contributions as board directors. Thank you to Forum member Colleen Valen, who sits on the Forum Foundation board and also serves as the Forum treasurer, for being with us to share more about their important work. Through the additional generosity of Univest, the Mainline Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the Executive Forum for Women Foundation will each receive a $1,000 donation to support their mission. Thank you on behalf of the Mainline Chamber of Commerce Foundation and SPW. I'd now like to welcome EVP, Director of Human Resources, Teresa Fosco from Univest, to share a few remarks, and welcome Colleen. Teresa?
Thank you very much, Nicole. And hello, everyone. I am Teresa Fosco. As she had said, I am the Executive Vice President and Director of Human Resources for Univest Financial Corporation. And we are a 900-person employee organization, basically doing banking, insurance, and investments for a number of counties across Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I have been with Univest for 18 years this year, and previously to that worked as the Director of for Cabrini University on the main line, and then previous to that, another banking institution in northeastern Pennsylvania. These are the banking institutions are not primarily, especially when I started, organizations where you would see a lot of diversity in the boardrooms. But as you'll see in your PwC report coming up in a little bit, that has changed a lot in a number of years. When I first came to Univest, one of the initiatives that we had were to bring more leadership programs to our individuals who were not only high-powering individuals and looking at as people who were raising up in the organizations, but also to promote women. And I started off in that role, and I'm proud to say that we were able to develop a lot of number of programs that are allowing us to be able to advance women in the boardrooms of nonprofit organizations across our counties, and not to mention in our departments here in the organization. In the fall of 2018, we started a women's leadership program here at Univest. And since then, we've graduated 70 women, and we have 25 more ready to start the program in the fall. And what we do with that program is we not only teach up-and-coming women about women's leadership and their personal leadership styles, we also allow them to network and talk about situations that are going on inside the organization and outside the organization to advance women. The other thing that we do is we strongly encourage these women to get involved in nonprofit organizations out in the communities. And for us, community at Univest is a core value of ours. So we're proud to say that women have been out there advancing themselves in various nonprofits throughout our communities. Mine, for example, when I was involved in the Women's Leadership Program, was to be in, I ended up working with the United Way of Southern New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and also with our local senior center here in Souderton. I have served as a board chair for both of those organizations, and I couldn't have done it without the support of our organization and also the support of a lot of women leaders and mentors that I've had over the years. I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to be surrounded by folks who have supported my journey, both in education-wise and also leadership skill-wise, and we continue to do that at Univest, and we're really proud to support organizations like this who want to see the next generation in that boardroom. I'm happy to say that around our board table for Univest, our executive leadership team has 5 women on it, and they vary from our general counsel to myself as the human resources director. And then our board makeup also includes diversity, and it's a commitment of ours at Univest to continue to advance diversity, equality, and inclusion. So once again, we're very happy to support these organizations. I hope you get a lot out of today's information. We got a little bit of a sneak preview in a couple of minutes ago, so there's a lot of good things to come. So I'd like to once again say thank you and introduce Colleen Valent from the Foreign Foundation to join us for the next part of our program.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you so much for the generous donation to the Forum Foundation. I wanted to take a moment and thank all of you for having me here today and allowing me to talk a little bit about the Forum Foundation. The Forum Foundation was established in 2004 as a 501c3 organization with what I consider a really important mission: to support initiatives that promote the advancement of all women leaders in the greater Philadelphia area. Our focus has been on educational programs that enhance the leadership skills of current and future women leaders in all sectors, programming that facilitates the advancement of women to positions of leadership, and enhancing public support of women leaders. All of these things are critically important. Our mission has always been critically important. We've partnered with the Forum of Executive Women. We work with their mentoring program. But today I have to tell you, I think that mission is more important than ever. We are in a place that none of us could have imagined ever being. The devastation caused by COVID-19 has been heartbreaking and unforgettable. And the recovery and rebuilding we're seeing, a story of human strength and resiliency. And, as I sit on the board of the Forum Foundation today, I'm excited for our future in so many ways, because our board is focusing this year on growth, and we're really keeping focused on our mission, but with an eye for opportunities to assist and be part of this recovery. So I thank you again for your generous donation. There couldn't come at a more important time to allow us to do the work we need to do. And I look forward to the rest of the program today.
Thank you so much. I'm going to now thank you again, Teresa and Univest, for those generous contributions. Some of you may already know that there's a collaboration between PwC and the Forum of Executive Women to provide an annual report on the status of women in leadership. Before leading into today's program, PwC's Office Managing Partner in Philadelphia, Deanna Byrne, will be sharing key highlights from that report regarding boardrooms. It's my pleasure to introduce Deanna Byrne to moderate and begin today's program. Deanna, are you with us?
I am.
Yay!
I have to share that I think everyone probably has one story during COVID where with all of our, Zoom meetings and different platforms where you've had one experience where you didn't think it was going to work. Today is mine. So I am so grateful that at 10:01, I was finally able to see and hear everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you so much. First of all, let me just say, really appreciate the opportunity to moderate today's panel. The panelists are all fantastic. I think everyone will really get the benefit of their experience. And really just wanted to, before I go through the report, just make sure, kind of set the stage for what we want to try and accomplish today. We want to try and increase our understanding of the different types of board roles that are out there, right? Gain an understanding of the process, and really the return on investment that serving on boards can provide, with maybe a specific focus on the leadership development experience that can come from serving on not-for-profit boards, nonprofit boards. Increase our understanding of the qualifications that are sought after from board members and what that process looks like. And also to gain an awareness of the valuable organizations that are in our region that are really there to help you achieve your board-related goals. So with that as a backdrop, let me just kind of set the stage with what the PwC and Forum report looks at. So annually, and we've been doing this for a long time with the Forum, PwC is extremely focused on diversity and inclusion, and really thought, hey, the Forum was already providing this report, and so we decided to come in and help. It looks at the top 100 public companies in the Philadelphia region, and they have to, obviously file reports with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So very data driven to say, of the board members that you have, how many are women? Of the top 5 earners, which is a required disclosure as well, how many are women? And of your executives, how many are women? And we've been tracking this data for a long time. Nicole, I don't know if you could share the slide. I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights. You can see this, and this comes from our report from October of 20, which really looks at data through 19. You can see that in the third line down, 21% of women are, or of the board seats are filled by women. I would love for that to be 50. I am a very optimistic person. So I do like to look at the fact that, if you look from 10 to 20, obviously, we've made a lot of progress. I think we've really seen some traction in the past few years. If you look at some of the underlying statistics down at the bottom, where you see the number of companies with 3 or more, where it's not just perhaps one female board member, but really starting to get to much more of a balanced board. You can see that the number went from 6 to 27. And then also looking at, of those 100, how many had no women, going from 41 to now just down to 8. And so we talked to a lot of companies, like, why do you believe that there's not as much female board representation? And in some cases, it could be as simple as, boards saying, I don't want to increase the number of board members I have. I think we have a good mix. I think we have a good balance. I feel like we have a highly effective board. And so, and I don't have retirements coming up. I mean, they know that a lot of boards don't even have term limits, and a lot of board members can serve into their 70s. And so we started thinking, okay, well, maybe another data point to look at that might be useful is how, when board seats actually open up, when Joe retires, right? Like, how many of those board seats go to women? So if Nicole, if you could go to the next slide, you'll see that nearly 40% of in the last 2 years, in 18 and 19, we're at 39% of those open board seats went to women. And that I thought was a very encouraging statistic, right? Because you could see that boards may not want to add numbers and may not want to, boot people off, but when given the opportunity, more of the seats are going to women. Would I prefer that number be 50? Yeah, I prefer that number be 55%, honestly, right? But I think if you continue to see that over the next few years, we should get to parity a little bit quicker than we have been. The pace should be a little bit quicker. I'd also note that we then said, okay, well, let's look at how old the board members are. And so you could see that the average age of the board members was 65. So I believe that in the next 5 years, there should be a number, even if people don't want to change their board composition from numbers perspective, there should be a number of seats opening up. And we're hopeful that they would go to a number of very qualified female candidates, right? So the other thing that I would highlight is just as we continue to look at this journey of diversity on boards, we also started thinking about other kinds of diversity. And right now, that's really hard data to get, just because there's not a lot of requirements for companies to disclose that information. So if Nicole, if you go to the next page, but I'd highlight that. So what we did was just went through the filings and said, how many companies actually even mention diversity in their proxy? How many talk about gender, ethnicity, and other things about their board makeup? How many and talk about gender data? And so we started like at least pulling some statistics, and we'll continue to really refine what these disclosures look like, as I do believe that some additional requirements are likely to come out in the next couple of years. And so that's kind of as we continue to evolve the process, we'll continue to focus on, like, I would say, inclusion and diversity in a broader sense. So that just kind of sets the stage for where we've been. I mean, I do think that the 21% should be 50. I hope we get there very soon. I know it'll take a while. But I am, like I said, I am an optimist at heart. I do remember that when I started with the firm, it was discouraged that I wear pants, right? So I try to keep it all in balance, that I had to wear a skirt when I started, and things have really changed a lot. So we're continuing down this path. So as we start with the panel, I thought it would be great if I could just ask everyone first to introduce themselves, kind of the organizations that you represent, and what board service has meant to you. So maybe we can start with Melissa.
Okay, technical difficulty. I'm unmuted. So good morning, everyone, and I'm very excited to be here and join this great panel. And I want to thank Nicole and Bernie, obviously, for putting this program together. Deanna, I think you'll be happy to note that I just saw a report that of June in the public sector, 44% of the open board seats were filled by women. So there is some movement in the positive way. So as Deanna just asked me about myself, I am Melissa Ludwig, and I'm here really representing the forum as a board member, as well the chair of the Women in Leadership Committee. And the Women in Leadership Committee is about 100 strong and growing, and a lot of our emphasis is on board work. That said, the forum, just a little bit more on the forum was established in 1977. What is really exciting to note, though, is that we are greater than 500 members. And last we looked, if you look at the year's progression, we have added over 100 members within the last year and a half, and that's during a pandemic. So thanks to Lisa Detweiler, I think she's in the audience, for all the hard work of her team. But the objective of the forum is really to bring women executive leaders together, to expand our impact in the community and at large, and to be viewed as a go-to resource for organizations when sourcing talent. We also want to provide a voice a platform for voices to be heard. We want to advance careers both in leadership and in the boardroom. So that's a little bit about the forum. We're very excited about, as we embark further into the 2021-22, because we do think that the program is going to be robust, and it's certainly going to help our leaders advance their careers. So a little bit about me. I had a 30+ year senior career with Macy's department stores. I managed about $600 million of a P&L. My workforce was 3,000, and I had about 19 vice presidents that reported to me. If I break it down to what the highlights are, just 30 years is a long term. So I'm just going to give you a couple of the highlights of my responsibilities over my journey, because it is a journey and it takes you again to where we are today. I was a designer of women's shoes. I'm sure everyone in the audience is excited to hear that. I actually design internationally as well as domestically. I am proud to say that I was the first woman to lead the iconic New York store while we were going through a rebranding of the organization, and it was, of course, a highlight of my career. I then led through 5 mergers and acquisitions, developing and piloting the nationwide strategies, which was a very exciting time because, as people say, why did you stay so long? Well, that's because I worked for 5 different organizations through my tenure and learned along the way. And I led many projects over $25 million because, again, we were always moving and advancing our stores. But last, what I like to say is in Macy's is that I had the best talent in the industry. We had a great talent pool. We were always advancing talent, and most importantly, looking for developmental trends within our talent to move them forward. Since leaving Macy's, I met with probably, and I think it's really important for this group to hear, when I left Macy's, I was defined as being in retail. So I had to redefine myself and reinvent what I was going to do next. And honestly, I basically interviewed about 20 business leaders in our own community to really establish where my skills were going to translate and what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I pursued board work by taking a mentor, and we'll talk about that. You already heard the word mentorship earlier on, and that was Carol Johnson, and I'll be so bold to bring her up on the, to talk about her on the screen with 61 participants. But Carol was a great influence and director for me to help establish what my homework was going to look like and what my journey was going to be. I landed into a public board role for a company. I've been through a couple of activist activities through that, and we exited the company through selling to one of the largest producers of consumer products in the paper space right before pandemic. So thank you, that happened. Then I joined an angel investing group at the Union League, and that was really because I am a continuous learner and I wanted to make sure that I understood what was the newest on the horizon for tech, healthcare, real estate, and so on. And lastly, I've been recently elected as the board chair for the NACD Philadelphia chapter. And I'm thrilled about that because I see that as great opportunities for women to advance themselves as well with my responsibility at the forum. So I'm thrilled to be here. I love being part of the forum. I have to say that the Women in Leadership Group is working towards, the pathway to get more women into these seats. And we look forward to talking more about that topic.
That's great. Thanks, Melissa. Alyssa, you want to go next?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa Abbott, and I'm the interim director of the Gupta Governance Institute at Drexel University's LeBeau College of Business. At the Institute, we aim to modernize corporate and nonprofit governance through practical dialogue and applied research. One of our signature programs is the Directors Academy, through which we provide governance education to individuals who are either serving on their first corporate board or those who have been deemed board ready. And so preparation for directorship is the perspective that I'll be bringing to the conversation this morning. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to be here and talk with you all today, and I'm looking forward to a really great discussion.
That's great, thanks. And Keisha, how about you go next?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Keisha Jordan, and I'm the Executive Director of Children's Scholarship Fund Philadelphia. We are the largest kindergarten through 8th grade private school tuition scholarship organization in Pennsylvania. And we provide tuition scholarships to more than 5,000 students from under-resourced families in Philadelphia annually. 83% of whom live in the lowest performing school catchment zones in the city of Philadelphia. So what that means is that without our scholarship, those students would likely attend a low performing school. And we see great results. We just announced that in 2019, 70% of our high school alumni went to college. And that's compared nationally to only 28% of students in the same income range. So we're really proud of the work that we're doing. I have staffed boards as an executive director, both at Children's Scholarship Fund and then also many years ago at the Philadelphia Black Alliance for Educational Options. And I have also staffed nonprofit boards at Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, where I led governance for a few years, and as board liaison at Boys Latin of Philadelphia Charter School. I have also served on a number of boards, mostly in the education and youth development realm, including private schools and charter schools. And I'm currently on the board at Community Partnership School and Horizons at Springside Chestnut Hill Academy. So glad to attend and looking forward to sharing some of what I've learned today.
That's great. Thank you. So I think we'll jump in with just talking about the different types of board of directors you can serve on and maybe the qualifications for each. And Keisha, how about we start with you there?
Sure. So I can talk about nonprofit board membership. And nonprofit board membership is very, very rewarding. It's an opportunity to have an impact on your community. And it's also an opportunity to share some of the skills and experiences that you have and that you've learned with a nonprofit organization. And you do so with a group of other board members and staff members who all believe in the same mission. There's lots of different types of nonprofit boards that you can join, from schools to foundations, where you can be involved in grant making, research groups, community development organizations, lots and lots of different types. If you've already served on a board, then you may be familiar with the process, but there are organizations that I can share, including the Mainline Chamber, that help you to figure out what type of board you might be interested in and give you the training to be on it. In terms of qualifications, I think nonprofits need your experience, and most importantly, I'd say for a qualification, you've got to be aligned with the mission of the organization. It's got to be something that you believe in. And also you have to make sure that you are prepared to take on the responsibilities of being a board member, right? Board members are responsible for making sure that the staff is carrying out the mission of the organization, for making sure that they spend the money that they raise or earn responsibly. So you've got to be someone who has the time and interest and opportunity to engage in that responsibly.
That's great. Melissa, how about you jump in next with more probably the for-profit side?
Yeah, for sure. And, I really thank Keisha for starting, because much of what, we start with is being part of nonprofit. It sets a tone for your governance understanding. So I highly encourage folks to be involved in that. I started there, just, talking a little personal about how this journey evolves. I was with Susan G. Komen, ALS, a number of differing nonprofits, and it does set the stage. As well, it is obviously a cause that is really needy of our attention. But the forum, when I think about the private and public, I think I was going to address the public piece of it. The forum really welcomes everything, on all different spectrums of board work. But there's one overarching theme that kind of transcends all of it. And that is, your skills dictate placement. You know, it's really the skills that you bring to the table, the added value that you can bring to the table. And most importantly, which I think, you know, you can look at any Google search you want, it really is about creating a harmonious and cooperative board. So, you know, your role that you play there is going to be extremely important. But as you evolve into public work, the public boards, which is very different than the private family sector, is that public board is under great deal of regulation. You know, from the SEC, which is Securities and Exchange Commission. We are held accountable, you know, periodically, but most importantly on an annual basis for audit balance sheets, for management results, for management compensations. We're highly exposed. And I think that's the difference that you seek when you're in the public sector as opposed to private or family, when that is not necessary to report. So the risk factor for those board members is pretty high. There's often legal, you know, exposure as well. And, you know, that in itself is a piece of it. The next piece that you asked about was within our own organization. And what I would say for the forum is we really try to provide the programming to guide and direct and support the pathway. We also work hard to connect our membership through a number of channels, you know, to gain visibility, because one of the things that you often hear about is, how do I become visible? How do I become available and know, you know, and knowledgeable about what the openings are? Well, some of that is actually being part of databases that allow others, meaning those organizations, to view you. And I'm really proud to say that, you know, the forum is aligned with two of those, which is called Equilar and Bolster. And we have a number of our members that have already worked through the process of those two fields of databases, and they provide a lot of education as well. The other piece that we work with is a group called ION, and that group is about 7 other organizations of women executive leader organizations nationwide that come together, and we share best practices, we adopt best practices, and most importantly, we support one another with some of the openings that come up so that we can, you know, there's no boundaries right now, you know, with Zoom and the way we're living in this virtual world, so we can share amongst us.
Great. Hey, Alyssa, coming from the Institute's work, would you say what types of qualifications are most sought after when we think about, you know, when boards are looking to add members?
Sure. So, you know, one that we always talk about, and I think is really a highly sought after, particularly in the public company space, but for boards, is having responsibility of a P&L. Having your own profit and loss statement is, you know, experience that is highly sought after and shows that, you know, you have the understanding of really running a business. So I did want to touch on private boards because I do, you know, the number of public companies are limited. So if you have professional expertise and experience in the private space, whether that's family owned, private equity, venture capital, startup, what have you, there's opportunities to get a board seat in that space. And so one of the key differences that Melissa talked about is the regulatory burden that doesn't exist in the private space. So it allows for more agility around decision-making at the board level. Another key difference is ownership structure. You'll see oftentimes that the CEO is the major shareholder. So in a situation like that, the board operates more as an advisor to the CEO. And it's an advisory role because it's nearly impossible to fire the CEO when they're the major shareholder. I also wanted to touch on compensation because I'm sure we're all really interested in pay. So, you know, I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone that compensation for private company directors is lower than that of your public company director peers. And that's mainly because very few private companies offer long-term incentive awards. I think it's something like 90% of public companies offer them, where only 20% of private firms offer that type of compensation. So it is, you know, private company directorship is still certainly a really viable opportunity for those that want to get into that directorship space.
Great, thanks. And I think it goes without saying, just to clarify, that on the nonprofit side, you know, there's no pay, right? This is,
Correct.
you're doing this for, you know, for the investment in the community. Yeah, the mission. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about characteristics of high performing boards. Obviously, as Melissa said, and Alyssa noted, everyone did, like you want to be part of a board that you have confidence in is expanding the mission, doing the right thing. What are some things that, and Keisha, I'd like you to start if that's okay, to talk about what characteristics of high performing boards that new directors should be thinking about or looking for.
Sure. You know, a nonprofit organization that is high performing is going to be one where board members are engaged. You know, there are some boards where board members are just listening to the executive and the staff talk and nodding heads, and that is not at all a high performing or effective board, because again, well, one, you're not getting anything out of it, but two, there's a high level of responsibility of being on a nonprofit board. So when I came to Children's Scholarship Fund last year, they were in the process of becoming a more highly effective board and creating a committee structure so that every board member could be part of a committee and contribute their skills and talents that way. I think that's really important to have highly functioning committees. Everybody's on a committee. Everybody finds some way in which they can make a contribution and provide some valuable experience and knowledge, and also learn themselves. So, you know, I'm happy to say in the work we've done over the last year and a half almost, we had 100% board participation at our last board meeting, which I also credit to Zoom because it's more convenient than coming to a board meeting. But most of the meeting was committee reports, board members sharing information, sharing the status of projects that they had worked on collaboratively with the executive and the team. So I think that's really, really important and a good question to ask a nonprofit if you were considering board membership. Highly effective boards have members who are well prepared, that they're prepared by the staff and they're prepared and ready for meetings, that they know what they're voting on, and then that goes for sure for for-profit boards as well, and that they ask questions when they don't know what's happening, because again, you're responsible for decision making for the organization and for knowing and catching up on things that you may have missed. And I think too, you know, board members, especially for nonprofits, have to be ambassadors of the organization in the community, and spreading the word about the work that the organization is doing. And the staff needs to really prepare board members with resources to do that. And I would say finally, a high performing board is one that really focuses on governance, not management, right? So that the management is done by staff, governance is done by board, and there's a healthy dialogue between, but where the two functions are separated.
Right. Alyssa, would you be able to add just your point of view here coming from the Institute?
Sure, I think Keisha covered some really, really great points. I think I'd also add, really, you want to look for a balanced team. Do the experience and skills around the table fit the strategy, and is there diverse roles and backgrounds? You know, for public company boards, a great place to find that information is in the proxy statement. A lot of companies are disclosing the skill sets of their directors and why they're the right fit for that company. So that's a good place to look. You know, you want to see, is there top talent around the table? Is this company attracting industry leaders with proven capabilities? You want to be, you know, in a target-rich environment, particularly if you're looking to make your first board seat 2, 3, 4. Putting yourself in an environment with top leaders is a great way to do so. And then, of course, you need to look at the culture and behaviors. You want to make sure that that board's able to engage in constructive debate, but still come together around a consensus at the end of the day. So certainly in your due diligence and interviewing for a board position, that's something that you can flesh out through your questions to see how the culture that exists within the boardroom might be a good fit for you.
That's great. Kind of going on from that, Melissa, I'd like your perspective on what are some of the important considerations and questions people should consider when you're evaluating going on a board?
Yeah, first off, Alyssa and Keisha did a great job of summarizing, you know, and the one thing that I would add to this piece in particular is investment of time. You know, as a board member, you have to understand your time commitment here. You know, boards are, and they both touched on this. It's not just about the 4 or 5 annual board meetings. It's about all the rich work you do to support that and to support the CEO or the executive director, whether in a profit world and or nonprofit world. So, you know, it's important that we all understand the amount of time that you budget that out, that you can commit to that, because the preparation is weighty, as Keisha said, you know, come to the table prepared. You know, oftentimes in the for-profit world, along with nonprofit, you're evaluating decks of information before you sit at the table. So that's very important that we understand the amount of time. And it's not, I would also say that those committees that were really becoming aligned in board governance for nonprofit, as a result of a lot of the work that's done in the profit center, whether it be human resource, human capital management, non-gov, you know, audit committees and or governance committees, depending on where you sit, you could be meeting outside of those 4 to 5 times, multiple times in a month. So it's critically important that we understand the time that we want to give to this work. And then how many are you really able to fit into your schedule, you know, because you don't want to underdeliver. The other thing I would add to this is, what is your value proposition? One of the things that was coming up was, you know, what you bring to the table. You know, boards are looking for specific, they're laser focused on who they need at their boards in the board seat, what role they need filled, what gap is in their board. And most importantly, what we have to understand is what is our own value proposition so that we can convey that message. And more importantly, when we come to the table, we're adding that message across, you know, the lines of our participants.
Great, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about how do boards find their new directors and how can people ensure that they're engaging and getting their name out there. And that's going to be different, obviously, for what your goal is. So Alyssa, how about we start with you this time?
Sure. So there's a couple ways that boards source directors, and that's through, I think, mainly other board members' recommendations. I think it goes a long way when someone can say, I know Susie and she would be a great fit for this board. Boards hire search firms to you know, help find candidates outside of their immediate network. You know, Melissa touched on the public databases. We see a lot of them growing, particularly around helping companies source diverse directors. So those are a couple places that you'll find companies will source directors. And then in terms of positioning yourself for a board role, you want to get the right experience. I talked about having that P&L experience. You want to be really proactive about networking, and in addition to networking, mentorship. Again, Melissa talked about her relationship with Carol. Mentorship can be really important through this process. And get educated. Programs, you know, I'll plug our Directors Academy, but there's programs at NACD. Of course, the auditing firms all have governance centers that have really great director education. Other universities like Stanford, Delaware, Columbia, they all have really great sources of education. So just be informed, network, and really put yourself in a target-rich environment.
That's great. Melissa or Keisha, would either of you like to add anything there?
Well, I would say Alyssa did a great job of really summarizing, you know, how organizations find their candidates. What I'd like to amplify is the network. You know, networking is a critical factor to this. And when earlier on in the program, someone said about women being ambassadors for one another, and I can't think of a better message there. And that is, you know, we have to be champions for ourselves. We have to work hard together. We have to be ears to the ground, boots to the ground of what's going on out there, so that we, at any given point, you hear something, you know, people think of me as a connector. That's what I like to do. It's when I hear an opportunity, it's how we put the right person in that role. So I think it's really critical that we are our own ambassadors, and most importantly, that our network becomes wider than maybe it is today. The other piece that Alyssa just touched on was really not just the Drexel program, but just education in general. You know, you keeping yourself relevant, keeping yourself current on current topics, especially in the space of which you want to sit, looking at the proxy, you know, information, the investor relations information, listening to some of their comments, along with looking at their financial data, their board of directors, see who you know, again, can further your ability to find a network. And then I will give the plug to Drexel. I attended Drexel, and she knows I'm one of her biggest cheerleaders as well, Patty Connolly, who started that program. It was terrific for me. It really launched me in terms of my understanding, and certainly, more importantly, my future role in the space. So I would say that as my addition.
Great.
Dana, I would just add
yes.
a couple of other programs. You know, the Mainline Chamber, of course, has Leadership Mainline. I participated in Leadership Philadelphia many years ago. Diverse Force has a program called Diverse Force on Boards, and those are, and there's others, and those are programs that help you understand what skills you have to contribute, what your interests are, and then actually help to place you on board. So I would recommend researching those types of programs.
No, that's great. Keisha, I want to stay with you when we talk about nonprofit board service. I know some people can be intimidated by the fundraising component, and that can be, you know, it's an important part of the board's role, I think, is, as you said, to be an ambassador and try to do that. Can you just talk a little bit about expectations there and how you know, boards handle that with their new board members?
Yeah, you know, I would say first and foremost, don't be afraid of the fundraising expectation for boards. A lot of times a board member is not going to ever have to ask anybody for money. And I think that that's the fear sometimes, right? That I'm going to have to go ask all my friends and family for money. What's really most important is your network and giving the nonprofit access to your network. And a nonprofit leader is going to help you in that process. So, you know, we have staff members who help each board member to figure out who is their network. We provide an email, template email, you know, to introduce the organization or information that they can share. But then we make the ask. We don't ask our board members to ask anyone for money. Smaller organizations might, but I would say to ask what the board's policy is. Most boards do have a policy, and you can ask that before you join. Almost every board, I'm sure, is going to have a 100% giving policy, meaning that every board member has to give something, whether that's $10 if that's affordable to you, or a corporate gift or a sponsorship. Some boards have what they call a give or get sort of a policy, where you may not be someone who can contribute, but can you use your networks to secure a sponsorship or some other type of a gift. So ask upfront, but don't be intimidated. Fundraising is important for nonprofits, but it's not the #1 priority for nonprofits when we select board members.
Great. I think that's really helpful for everyone to hear. Okay, so we're wrapping up the panel session. I think what I'd like to do is just ask each of the panelists to give final thoughts and practical advice on what you'd like to emphasize to the audience today. And I'm just going to go across my screen here and start with Melissa.
Okay, well, you know, what I would say to the group is it's a journey. You know, it does, it's a journey. It will take time. Give yourself permission, you know, for that time, because right now is our time as women to have equal footing at a table. So we need all of you. That's #1. The other thing I would say is find a mentor. Find someone that you have a lot of confidence in, that you can align with, that understands the space that you want to be in, or more importantly, just understands you and can start to put together your storyline so that when you're conveying it, it's clear, it's concise, and it's impactful. So they would be the 2 things that I would add.
That's great. How about you, Alyssa?
I would say my key takeaway is don't jump at your first board opportunity. Make sure that you're doing your due diligence to ensure that it's a high performing board. Have a really strong understanding of your background, skill set, and expertise so that you can really focus your investment of time properly and really target the right fit board.
I think that's great advice. And Keisha?
I would just encourage everyone to consider nonprofit board membership. It can be really great for you in your career as well as for the nonprofit organization. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little research. There was a 2018 nonprofit leadership survey of corporate employees who joined boards, and they found a positive impact on their career. They described themselves as more confident, better leaders, better able to accept responsibility, feeling more useful, finding more meaning in their own work, and being better qualified for promotion. Nonprofit boards seek out thought leaders and influencers from the community. So there's also the opportunity for you to network with people who could impact your career.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic advice. And I would add my 2 cents just to say, and I think Keisha said it very early on, make sure you're really aligned with the mission, because it's extremely important. And if there's a mismatch there, and someone asked you to be on the board because perhaps they thought it would enhance your career, but you're not really as committed to the mission, I think that you wind up seeing that, and it's not as good for your professional development, and it's not as good for the organization. So just be really mindful of that. When it works really well. You can see it. So just be focused on getting on the right board for the right reasons. And Nicole, I think that wraps up the panel.
It does. Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for this engaging dialogue. I do have a question in the chat that I can share, and feel free to jump in, whoever wants to answer it. I am definitely interested in nonprofit board participation. What qualifications would I need?
I would say you've got qualification number 1, which is that you're interested. We need folks who are mission aligned and interested in the nonprofit world. So I would say to think about what your skills and talents are that you would like to contribute, what issues and topics and community problems that you want to solve, and do the research. The qualifications, again, are really simple: mission alignment and ability to commit to the nonprofit organization. I think what you just got to do now is find your match.
I have an amazing question here from Rosemarie Dempsey. My experience with some of the boards that I am on is that there are just a handful of members who do all of the work, and then the rest of the members are just on the board to say they're on the board. What's your opinion of this situation, and how can we get people more engaged? Who wants to take that loaded question?
Is that from a nonprofit or from a for-profit perspective? If I can ask just.
Rosemary, can you follow up in the chat? Is that nonprofit or for-profit? I mean, I know Rosemary serves on a nonprofit or a not-for-profit board. She's on our advisory council.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure.
I'll jump in because, being part of the nonprofit space as well, I mean, it's a shoulder to shoulder rub. I think we all have to encourage and certainly bring forward those that may not be, I don't want to say, let's just say engaged. There's always an opportunity for further engagement, but I also would also encourage for us to be thinking about who's next in line for the board work, so that, if those folks continue to be on your board, who's going to be next up to replace? Because it'll become painfully obvious to the group at hand that there's got to be a change up.
She said nonprofit, by the way. She did write in the chat.
Yeah. I would say too, I agree that this does happen sometimes, sure, but also don't make assumptions about what people are contributing, because sometimes there are board members who make contributions that you can't see. And a good executive director, good staff is going to make a personal connection with every board member, and they may be working behind the scenes in ways that you just don't know about. I can say every board member in our organization is doing something and contributing in some way. So some of those ways folks are contributing is a little, quieter than what you may see at board meetings.
Keisha, that's a really good point. And I'll just piggyback on that, coming from a corporate perspective from Macy's. is, it wasn't always about the financial. It was really about some of that cumulative sponsorship. If you wanted to be, getting the word out, how could we do that differently? So at times, sometimes to Keisha's point, we don't know what other folks around the table are contributing. And it may not just be purely in the fundraising component. It could also be in other services that are being provided. So, for that, I'll add.
Great. I have another question here. What role does a nonprofit founder usually have on a board? Is that a conflict of interest?
I'll jump on that. I mean, I was a co-founder, and I've also been part of a founder. And in both cases, I think, and I'm sure Keisha would agree, is that the cause really drives your enthusiasm, because we're all working towards one goal. So I've not encountered that to be a difficulty, at least in the ones that I've been part of. And I often think that it's really the cause that gets us all excited and want to support.
I think having a founder on the board is gold. It can be gold. We're lucky at Children's Scholarship Fund that our co-founders, one is on the board and one is still very involved. But she makes sure not to step on toes. And I think for a founder, that's the thing that they have to do, to separate governance and management. So I think that's the only kind of conflict there. But I think it can be great to have that unique perspective that a founder can bring to a board.
I have another question here in the chat. As a full-time working woman, is board service a nice weekend commitment, or is this something you should discuss with your employer, especially if you're sitting on more than one board?
I mean, I would weigh in to say that I think it's always important to talk to your employer about it, because so many organizations want their people to be engaged in the community. Aside from just driving, great outcomes in the community, it does also typically provide some good networking. And so I think you may find that a number of organizations are supportive, and it's good to get feedback on what's reasonable, what's appropriate, what are you thinking, and to make sure there's alignment there.
Yeah, and I piggyback and agree with Deanna in that I've had folks come to me and ask me that question specifically, and they've gone to their employer, and their employer has been wonderfully receptive, but I do think to have mutual expectations of time commitment and interference or not of job is really important, that you lay that out up front so that no one's, again, confused on that outcome.
Okay, we have one last question here, and then we're going to close the program today. Are you seeing broader opportunities for recruitment in a Zoom-enabled environment versus previous, perhaps more geographically constrained or sourcing environment?
Okay, it sounds like I'll jump in on that again. I would say, what I'm seeing is myself is that it's a little harder to understand what openings are available because you're not out there networking person to person. So, and a lot of the networking helps you understand where some of those opportunities exist. On the flip side, it gives a wonderful opportunity for folks that are geographically in different parts of the country to come together and to not exhaust the travel component that used to be part of the decision making. So sourcing talent can be much more wide, certainly diverse, and available to organizations. So I think that is also happening at this time.
And for our organization, we are Philadelphia based, so we're really seeking out folks in the city. But of course, we haven't been able to meet people. I haven't. I started in March. I haven't even met some of my board members in person because of COVID. But I've met them all on Zoom, and I actually did an interview with a potential board member on Zoom. So I'm thankful for the technology that still gives me that ability to have the personal touch.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think we could close the event now. I want to thank all of you for your time. The good news is